Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to go through the exact same worksheet, only this time, instead of using the plant-wide allocation rate, we're going to use the departmental allocation rate. This means that we're going to look at the factory overhead assigned at a department level and then determine the allocation rate based on whether that department uses, in our example, direct labor hours or machine hours. There's other things they could use, but we'll use these for our example. Okay. So we're going to start with our cupcake makers. We have two departments, baking and frosting. And someone has kindly separated our factory overhead by department. Okay. So now when we calculate the departmental factory overhead, so for baking, it's $96,000. And for frosting, it's $256,000. The departmental direct labor hours for baking is 12,000. And if you didn't want to retype this, you don't have to, but I'm going to. And for frosting, the frosting department uses 20,000 direct labor hours. For machine hours, the baking department uses 6,000 hours, and the frosting department uses 16,000 hours. Okay, so what is our allocation rate if we decided to use direct labor hours? Well, for baking, it would be our $96,000 of factory overhead divided by our direct labor hours of 12,000. So we would allocate $8 of factory overhead for every 1 hour of direct labor used. For frosting, we would take our $256,000 of factory overhead allocated to the frosting department and divide that by the 20,000 direct labor hours we expect to use. And we would come up with a rate of 12.8. So for every hour of direct labor, we would assign $12.80 of factory overhead. Finally, if instead of using direct labor hours as our denominator, we use machine hours, then the rate for the baking department would be 96,000 divided by 6,000, $16 per machine hour. So for every machine hour we use in baking, we would allocate $16 of factory overhead. And in the frosting department, we would get 16 hours as well. So for every hour of machine hours used, we would allocate 16 hours of, or $16 of factory overhead. So you can look, if we ended up using machine hours for both, then we would have just a department-wide rate, okay? But if we look at this, it looks like baking uses a lot more direct labor than they do machine hours. So that might be a better way to allocate our baking factory overhead. Whereas the frosting, pretty split, right? They use a little bit more direct labor hours, but it's pretty 50-50. So either of these rates would really be acceptable and would get the job done. Okay, so if you feel like, all right, I get what we're doing, feel free to go ahead and do coffee roasters and peanut butter sandwich makers on your own. I'm going to go ahead and continue and do them. So those of you who want to stick with me, then feel free to do so and we will calculate those. Okay, so for coffee roasters, I'm just going to copy down our factory overhead and then our direct labor hours and our machine hours. And again, since it's written for us up here, if you don't want to copy these down, you don't have to. Okay, so if we decided to allocate based on direct labor hours in the roasting department, our allocation rate would be our factory overhead for the roasting department divided by the direct labor hours we expect to use in the roasting department. We would allocate at a rate of $10 per factory overhead per direct labor hour used. If we use machine hours, then we would divide factory overhead by the number of machine hours we expect to use in the roasting department, and we come up with 4.5. So for every machine hour we use in the roasting department, we would allocate $4.50 of factory overhead. For the grinding department, If we decided to allocate based on direct labor hours, then for every direct labor hour we use, we would allocate $10 of factory overhead. And if we did machine hours, then for every machine hour we use, we would allocate at a rate of $6 of factory overhead for every machine hour used. Again, looking at this, it seems like roasting is uses a lot more machine hours than direct labor hours. So this $4.50 per machine hour probably is the one we would choose. Grinding is pretty 50-50. We'd probably go with machine hours, but they would have different rates. So it wouldn't be a plant-wide rate like it was when we used machine hours for cupcake baker. Okay. Finally, our peanut butter makers, and I'm just going to copy this information down. And I'm going to do a quick copy and paste. So I'll highlight, right click, copy, put it where I want it to go, right click, paste. There we go. All right. So if the bread baking or the break baking, go ahead and change that. If the bread baking department decided to allocate factory overhead based on direct labor hours, they would allocate at a rate of $1 per direct labor hour used, $1 factory overhead. If they decided to do machine hours, they would allocate at a rate of 3.5 hours of factory overhead, or $3.50 of factory overhead would be applied for every machine hour used in the bread baking department. And I'm just going to copy and paste these formulas over to show you a little bit more with Excel. Okay, so if the peanut butter making department decided to allocate based on direct labor hours, they would allocate $3 of factory overhead into the process every time they spent one direct labor hour. If they use machine hours, it'd be $1 factory overhead for every machine hour used. And these are all costs that we are infusing into or injecting into the WIP part of the process. Sandwich assembly, if they decide to use direct labor hours, they will apply $1.60 of factory overhead. They'll add that to WIP for every one direct labor hour used. If they use machine hours, then they will apply $8 of factory overhead for every one machine hour used in WIP. Okay, again, taking a quick look, in bread banking, they're using a lot more direct labor hours than machine hours, so that might be a slightly more accurate process. Just the opposite for peanut butter making, they're using a lot more machine hours than they are direct labor hours, so I might pick machine hours. And for sandwich assembly, it looks like it's more direct labor focused, so I might pick that. Either way is fine, but you can see how this allows us to really see what's the primary resource being used and then allocate factory overhead that way, which hopefully is going to give us some slightly more accurate product costs. All right, that wraps up the departmental allocation rate. In the next video, we are going to take our first taste of activity-based costing, or ABC. So I will see you there. All right.